All right, here we are playing Jeopardy. All right, during which stage of the demographic transition does a population experience a rapid increase in growth? Third most populous country in the world behind China and India. And what is the approximate population of this country now? Again, hand up if you know one or two or three of these answers. When I see a bunch of hands up, then I know I can go on because people have given it their best shot. Please don't be shy about raising your hand. Otherwise, I'm not going to know if I need to give you guys more time or less time. Inevitably, I'm going to have a lot of the same people raising their hands because they've done all the notes. They maybe started working on their study guide already. There are a variety of reasons. All right, we got about 10 or 11 of you guys with your hands up. All righty. All right, about 15 seconds, kids. And I'm sorry I'm not playing music this time. I just found that I think that was distracting for a number of students. I think maybe you could benefit a little bit more from some quiet time. Plus, I know that the sound kind of mutes me out when I'm talking. All right, here we go. It is the stage 2 of the demographic transmission. That's when the death rate decreases. The United States is the third most populous nation. And we're probably a little bit closer to 350. But the information that I found in the book suggested that it was closer to 325 or 330. So that's, of course, what you will need to know for the test. By the way, about 90% of the information that is going to be required on the test will be covered in this Jeopardy game. Remember, the Jeopardy game is harder than the test because on the test you see what the answers are. Here you don't. So if you know the answers to a lot of the questions in the Jeopardy game, logic would state that you're probably pretty ready for the test. Obviously, if you don't know the answer to many of the questions in the Jeopardy game, you got some work to do. Okay, here we go. All right, 3 more questions. If a country has a growth rate of 4.5%, what is its doubling time? You guys should be experts at that by now. A bunch of characteristics of a population. Calculate the annual percentage growth rate. You should be able to do that by now. Don't worry about showing your work, obviously. In a classroom, I make students do that. True or false? The following series of numbers shows exponential growth: 14, 28, 56, 112, and 224. All right, again, hand up when you think you know at least two of the 3 answers. All right, you guys, about 30 seconds. Again, please don't be shy about raising your hand. All right, ladies and gentlemen, here we go. Okay, so number 1, that is false. Okay, so an example of exponential growth would be like 2, 4, 16. I think 16 times 16 is 256. So it's when it increases by its amount. This is just simply increasing by 2. So that is a false statement. 15.5 years for the doubling time and 0.18% for the annual growth rate. All right, here we go. 5 questions for you. Improved medical care and sanitation are directly responsible for the blank of the human population over the last 100 years. That sounds really familiar. If an average human needs about 2,000 calories per day to survive, how many total daily calories does the world need? You should know approximately what the world's population is by now. Sketch an age-structured diagram for a rapid population growth. What shape would it be? Sketch one for a slow population growth. Notice it says population growth, not a declining population. What type of survivorship curve, 1, 2, or 3, is particularly vulnerable to changes to the environment? All right, if you think you know at least 3 of these answers, put your hand up. Again, 5 questions. If you think you could get the answer to 3 of these or more, hand up, please. All right, got a couple more you guys filtering in. Okay, about 20 more seconds before I show you guys the answers. All right, ladies and gentlemen, here we go. Okay, so that leads to the population growth increase. Currently, we're about 7.7, 7.8 billion times 2,000. So it's going to be somewhere in between 15 and 16 trillion calories necessary per day. Remember, a pyramid represents rapid growth with a large proportion of the population at a young age. The U.S. has a slow growth. That's with kind of a bulge in the middle. But most important is that you have less young aged people than you do middle aged people. Okay, and of course, Japan decline would be an upside down pyramid. Okay, type 1, organisms that produce very few offspring and that usually give a lot of care to those offspring. Humans are an example of that. Of course, we're really intelligent, so we can figure stuff out more so than maybe a lion. But those are organisms that will struggle with environmental change. And it's primarily because they don't produce a whole lot of offspring. So if both of those offspring die, obviously that's going to harm the population's numbers. Whereas a type 3 survivorship curve, that would be like an organism that produces thousands of offspring, but they usually put no effort into caring for those. And, if the environment changes, usually, some of them are going to survive. They would do the opposite. So type 1 survivorship curve struggles with changes for the environment. Okay, on to chapter 5 in ecosystems. In a closed system with constant mass, energy is not created nor destroyed, only changed. What does this describe? Blank can be solar energy converted to chemical energy, derived from living or recently living things, and energy available for trophic levels. Hand up if you think you know one or both of those questions. Okay, about 15 more seconds. All right, folks, here we go. These should sound familiar. I'm pretty sure I know one of them was a warm-up question. Maybe even both of them were. Here we go. That's the first law of thermodynamics. Closed system with constant mass. Energy is not created nor destroyed, only changed. And biomass. All three of these statements describe biomass. Draw a 4 trophic level food chain that could be found in a tundra. So just know the types of organisms that you could expect to see in a tundra ecosystem. List 3 things that a generalist omnivore, so remember, an omnivore eats both plants and animals. A generalist means they eat a variety of things. They're not picky. And usually generalists are successful in environments that are unpredictable because they can eat, again, a variety of things. Okay. Second law of thermodynamics explains that blank of energy is transferred from one trophic level to the next. I'll give you a clue. This is a number with a unit. So if you think you know 2 of the 3 questions, answers up there, please put your hand up. All right, you guys, about 30 more seconds. All right, here we go. Okay, so types of organisms you're going to find in tundra: Arctic fox, lynx. You might find an occasional raptor, eagle, falcon, maybe rodents, not many insects, maybe some grasses. Okay. Those are the types of organisms. Maybe even a pioneer species like a lichen if you've got rock exposed. Okay, so generalists, that is an omnivore, they're going to eat plants, they're going to eat insects, they're going to eat animals. Coyotes are a good example of a generalist omnivore. They'll eat a variety of things. It kind of depends on what's available. And remember, 10% goes from one trophic level to the next, 90% is lost as metabolic heat. All right, here we go. If a blank were to fill up with organic and inorganic matter, it would likely turn into a meadow through early succession. An organism that only eats plants is called what? A species that is important and essential to numerous other species is an example of a blank blank. In an area, herbivores eat plants, they're eaten by predators, remains are eaten by scavengers. The presence of all these organisms describes which ecological term? So if you think you know 2 or 3 or all 4 of these answers, please put your hand up. Give you guys about a minute to look these up. All right, you guys, here we go. Okay, so if a lake were to fill up with organic and inorganic matter, so like inorganic matter would be like dirt, rock, likely turn into a meadow through succession. Herbivores eat plants. Keystone species, if they are removed or harmed, likely could upset the entire ecosystem. And when you have numerous different populations of different types of organisms in the same place at the same time, that is a community. Okay, BGC cycles. What process produces carbon dioxide and water vapor? True or false? Humans interfere with the water cycle with transpiration, allowing water vapor to enter the atmosphere. If you know one or both of these answers, hand up, please. These should be simple for you guys. About 15 seconds. All right, kids, here we go. Okay, so cell respiration, we exhale carbon dioxide and water vapor. That is the product of cell respiration, where glucose and other food molecules are broken down in the presence of oxygen to get our cells adenosine triphosphate, ATP. Humans are not involved in transpiration. Transpiration is evaporation from a plant surface. All right, here we go. Blank rocks are created by heat and pressure. Blank rocks are created by particles being cemented together, while blank rocks are created by melting and cooling. Plate tectonics describes the movement of Earth's or sections of the Earth's blank sphere. What sphere is the crust? Long-term storage of phosphorus and sulfur are found in what form? All right, about 15 more seconds. All right, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay, metamorphic rocks are changed rocks, and heat and pressure do the changing. Sedimentary rocks come from particles, which are referred to as sediments, being cemented together. Igneous, ignite, come from melting, magma, lava, and then recrystallizing. The lithosphere, when the lithosphere moves in large plates, that is plate tectonics, continental drift, and phosphorus and sulfur are stored long term in rocks. Sedimentary rocks would contain a great amount of blank because they are not exposed to great amounts of heat, pressure, and or melting. The input of solar energy drives which part of the water or hydrologic cycle? Increased deforestation will lead to an increase in what atmospheric gas? Think of the carbon cycle. Ocean acidification, decrease in ocean pH, would lead to a decrease in blank because it is more difficult for them to form their exoskeletons. About 20 seconds. All right, here we go. Okay, sedimentary rocks have fossils. Matter of fact, the fossil that some paleontologists are looking for that it would link current primates, humans, to ancient hominids, the quote unquote missing link. It's possible that if that fossil did ever exist, it's been destroyed by now. Melting of fossils by magma or metamorphosing the rocks could destroy that evidence, assuming it ever existed. Evaporation is how solar energy impacts the water cycle. So deforestation is kind of a double-edged sword. It's a double whammy. Not only do trees remove CO2 from the atmosphere, so obviously if you take away the tree, you're not able to take the CO2 out of the atmosphere anymore. But many times, if they're clearing that area for cattle or for homes or crops, they're burning all that vegetation to get rid of it, which adds a huge amount of CO2 into the atmosphere. Corals are in real big trouble. We just finished watching Before the Flood with my biology class. 50% of the world's coral reefs in the last 20 years are dead because of the decrease in pH, ocean acidification, because the oceans are bringing more carbon dioxide in because there's too much carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And that's creating carbonic acid, which is making the oceans acidic. Just another example of how burning fossil fuels is impacting the planet. Remember, coral reefs are kind of like the rainforests of the ocean in terms of diversity. They have a lot of species that live there when they are alive, lots of fish species. So when the coral reefs die, all the fish and the other species leave, and that is causing starvation in some fishing communities that used to rely on those fish. Okay, on to chapter 7. The consumption of blank by bats and the control of blank provided by forests in Central America are example of ecosystem services. True or false, ecological benefits of wildlife include pollination, matter cycling, pest control, and ecosystem homeostasis. Hand up if you think you know one or more of these questions. Okay. Okay, so bats, they eat insects, so mosquitoes. Remember, mosquitoes carry diseases. When you have trees and roots and vegetation that have their roots into the soil, they help maintain the soil, which prevents erosion and helps prevent flooding. And true, these are all ecological benefits that wildlife provide for ecosystems. A blank is the land area that delivers recharge into a smaller tributary streams that flow into larger rivers. Trenches are formed from which type of plate boundary? Pollination, water purification, nitrogen fixation, soil formation are all types of blank blank. If you think you know at least two of these answers, put your hand up. All right, about 15 more seconds, kids. All right, here we go. Okay, so a watershed is the land area that delivers recharge to smaller tributary streams that flow into larger rivers. So the Sacramento is, Carmichael, College Greens, Arden Park, we're in the American River watershed. Closer to downtown Natomas, they're in the Sacramento River watershed. Sacramento in general is in the American River Sacramento watershed, Sacramento River. I'm going to unmute my video just for a second so you guys can see. Whoops, that's not what I'm. Okay, so a convergent plate boundary. If we're talking about a continent like maybe Northern California, Oregon, Washington, when an continental crust, when an oceanic plate comes, it gets shoved underneath. That's called subduction. But when it does that, it pulls the continental crust down a little bit, which creates a low spot in the Earth's crust, and that is a trench. So trenches are associated with convergent plate boundaries, specifically oceanic continental or oceanic, which is the type of plate boundary that's produced in Indonesia, Japan, etc. Okay. All right, here we go. Which element cycling through ecosystems is most controlled by microscopic bacteria? Forests and oceans are referred to as carbon blanks. Increasing the yield of farmland by using more fertilizer, better irrigation, and faster growing crops is referred to as the blank blank. When did this practice begin approximately? If you think you know at least three of the four questions up there, put your hand up. All right, about 20 more seconds. All right, kids, here we go. So remember nitrogen fixing bacteria take the broken nitrogen from the atmosphere and fix it into ammonium, which eventually gets to nitrite and nitrate. And we use both of those compounds in fertilizers. Forests and oceans are carbon sinks or carbon reservoirs. But of course, as we cut down forests, carbon goes from the sink back into the atmosphere. Growing more crops faster, that is referred to as the Green Revolution. And that primarily started in the 1960s. All right, here we go. Chapter 8, Biodiversity and Invasive Species. Building a new highway in a forest separates an insect species. Over time, they can no longer interbreed and they evolve into two distinct species. What mechanism is responsible for this speciation? Speciation is the process where new species are formed. True or false? Extinction of honeybees would be devastating for life on Earth. Hand up if you know one or both of the answers to these questions. All right, about 10 more seconds. By the way, if you're feeling pretty confident about these answers, you're in good shape. You still got Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night, Monday night to prepare. If you know the answers to a lot of these questions and your study guide's in good shape, I don't know, maybe take a day, take 2 days off, then start hitting it again on Sunday. All right, here we go. So geographic isolation. So there are lots of examples of geography that do this. Oceans, mountain range. If we're talking about a prey species and we have habitat fragmentation, you know, if they cut down part of a forest, it's like, I ain't going out there because like Jimmy got picked off by an eagle last week, so we're staying over here. If you have like an insect that can't swim or can't fly, like an ant, a creek, even a small little babbling brook would prevent the populations from mixing. All of those, separating the genes, allowing no intermixing of genes anymore, could lead to speciation. And of course, all pollinators do a huge ecosystem service for us. It's in the trillions of dollars. And if we lose honeybees and any other pollinators like that, that's going to put a huge burden on the farming industry. So hopefully we can turn that around. Okay, the blank blank was accidentally introduced into the Great Lakes and became a very bad invasive species. Blank is the change of the genetic composition of a population over many generations. Which geographic region and altitude, altitude is like 0 at sea level, into the atmosphere at a higher altitude, on Earth would you find the greatest degree of biodiversity? Hand up when you think you know at least 2 of these answers. Okay, about 30 seconds. All right, here we go. So that's the zebra mussel. That was the invasive species in the Great Lakes. Change in the genetic composition over time, leading to speciation. That's evolution. So low altitude, so ground level, okay, near the equator, you could expect to find the greatest degree of biodiversity. All right, last questions, y'all. Blank blank is defined as the number of species and the number of individuals of each species in an area. Which type of selection did the peppered moths undergo during the Industrial Revolution? It's not natural selection. There are different graphs that represent that. Hint, the population slowly changed from mostly light-colored to mostly dark-colored moths over a period of years. And what is the biggest reason for species becoming endangered and extinct due to human actions? Hand up if you think you know at least two of these questions. Okay, about 30 seconds. All right, here we go, kids. Species diversity, number of species and the number of individuals of each species in an area. Directional selection is the peppered moth. And habitat loss or habitat fragmentation is the leading contributor to extinction or the threatening of species. Okay, one last time, I'm going to ask you guys to raise your hand. If you are feeling pretty confident about this test, which again is 4 days away, put your hand up. If you're feeling pretty confident, especially knowing that you get to use your resources, maybe you got a little bit more work to do on your study guide. Maybe you got to get your resources organized a little bit. If you're feeling pretty good about it, just throw your hand up. Okay. All right, thank y'all. Okay, so let me stop this share real quick. Not the share, but stop the recording.